the quiet shadows of a sleepy town, where the days unfold with the gentle rhythm of routine, some stories refuse to fade into silence. They haunt the edges of memory, whispered in uneasy tones by those who dare to remember. What becomes of a life snatched away in the blink of an eye, erased without a trace? How can an entire community come to terms with a disappearance so profound that it fractures the very fabric of its existence? This is the story of Michael Reynolds, a boy who vanished on an ordinary morning in 1992, a simple walk to school that turned into a mystery engulfed in darkness. For 30 long years, Michael's fate remained a haunting enigma, a void that swallowed hope, twisting it into sorrow. Then decades later, an object emerged from the depths of a cold, silent river his bicycle weathered, and broken, a ghostly relic of that day when innocence was lost. Welcome to Silent Disappear. We delve deep into the shadows of a small town gripped by fear, the echoes of a child's disappearance and the chilling resurrection of a past long thought buried. This is a tale of mystery and despair, of secrets submerged beneath the surface, waiting for their moment to resurface, a narrative that stretches across time, reminding us all that some stories never truly end. It was June 15th, 1992, in the town of Miller's Hollow, an unassuming place nestled in the heart of the American Midwest. A town where neighbors greeted each other with familiar smiles and children played beneath the watchful eyes of large oak trees. The kind of town where doors were left unlocked and the biggest danger seemed to be the occasional summer storm. Miller's Hollow was a community marked by its traditions, with its small elementary school at the center of daily life. Generations grew up walking the same streets, sharing the same paths to school, to church, to the little corner store. The morning sun often cast long shadows over Linden Avenue, where Michael Reynolds lived, an ordinary boy from an ordinary family whose world was about to be shattered forever. In 1992, the town was untouched by the frenetic pace of the outside world. Televisions flickered with black and white newsreels, rotary phones sat on kitchen counters, and every face in Miller's Hollow was familiar. It was a place that clung tightly to its sense of security, unaware that on that fateful June morning, something unimaginable was about to unravel. Michael Reynolds was 13 years old, a boy neither too young nor yet on the cusp of adulthood. Like many boys his age, he was filled with a restless energy, a yearning for adventure that outpaced the quiet streets of his hometown. He loved baseball comic books and spending afternoons by the river that snaked behind his neighborhood. His bicycle was his prized possession, a red Schwinn Stingray, slightly scratched, but well cared for, a symbol of freedom and the simple joys of childhood. School days in Miller's Hollow were straightforward rituals. The bell rang at 8:15 a.m. The corridors buzzed with laughter and chatter, and lessons unfolded in familiar patterns. But on June 15th, 1992, the routine fractured. Michael Reynolds never made it to class. He disappeared in broad daylight, vanishing from the very path meant to guarantee his safety. As we step into this story, the ordinary becomes the extraordinary, the familiar terrifyingly foreign. Over the coming hours, we will unravel the layers of mystery that have enveloped Michael's disappearance, explore the lives touched by loss and uncertainty, and uncover the startling truths that emerged 3 decades later from the cold waters where his bicycle was found. This is not just the story of one boy. It is a story of a community's collective nightmare, the place where hope meets despair and where the past refuses to rest. Michael Reynolds was a boy shaped by the fabric of Miller's Hollow, a town where history and hearth intertwined in the quiet dignity of small-town life. To understand the gravity of his disappearance, one must first glimpse the world he inhabited, the life he led before the void. From the outside, Michael appeared as any typical 13-year-old, curious, energetic, and teetering on the edge of adolescence. His sandy blonde hair caught the sunlight in a way that made him seem almost luminous on an otherwise mundane street. His smile was easy and genuine, a window into a heart brimming with youthful optimism. Friends would describe him as loyal, quick-witted, and sometimes mischievous, but never reckless. His family home on Linden Avenue sat modestly amidst neat rows of similar houses, each marked by white picket fences and well-tended gardens. The Reynolds household was close-knit but unassuming. Michael's father, Joseph Reynolds, was the local postmaster, a man of routine and responsibility, known for his steady demeanor and unwavering devotion to his family. His mother, Elaine, was a school secretary at Miller's Hollow Elementary kind, yet reserved, always protective of her children. Michael's younger sister, Emily, was only 9, inseparable from her brother in the way only siblings from a small town could be. Their lives were intertwined with the rhythms of Miller's Hollow summer evenings on the porch, neighborhood barbecues, and lazy weekends spent at the river. The town itself was a character in this story, its streets lined with maple trees casting dappled shadows, storefronts with faded signs advertising goods long forgotten, and a central square where townsfolk gathered for festivals and farmers' markets. This was a town where everyone knew your name, your family history, and your favorite ice cream flavor. Michael's daily routine was simple, but cherished. Each morning he would wake before dawn's first light, eat a quick breakfast prepared by his mother, and step outside with his red Schwinn bicycle to ride the 2 miles to school. The route took him along Linden Avenue to Mill Creek Road, passing the old mill, the community park, and finally, the worn bricks of the elementary school. The way was familiar, comforting, a path trod by generations of children before him. His ride was unhurried, filled with ordinary moments, waving to Mr. Thompson, watering his garden, greeting Mrs. Harper, walking her dog, pausing briefly to watch the squirrels scampering through the underbrush. It was almost a ritual, this careful balance of freedom and safety, a dance between childlike wonder and the boundaries set by the community. For Michael, the bicycle was more than just transportation. It was a ticket to exploration, a symbol of independence at an age where the world was beginning to stretch beyond the known horizon. At school, Michael was bright and curious. Teachers recalled how he excelled in literature and history, how his eyes would light up when discussing stories of adventure and discovery, and how he carried a book with him everywhere, often found lost in its pages during recess. Yet he was modest, a boy who blended into the backdrop rather than commanding the spotlight. His friends spoke of him with fondness, a steadfast companion eager for mischief, but grounded by kindness. Among his closest was Jason Miller, a neighbor and classmate with whom he shared secret football games in the park and afternoons at the local comic book store. Theirs was a friendship strengthened by shared dreams and whispered plans of the future. The town's social fabric was woven tightly around families, like the Reynolds' people, who moved through their days with gentle predictability, confident in the safety their small world promised. Children played in the streets until dusk, neighbors looked out for each other, and community events punctuated the calendar with moments of joy and unity. On the morning of June 15, 1992, the air carried a hesitant warmth typical of early summer. Birds sang their morning songs, and the town stirred awake under an expansive sky streaked with pastel hues. It was a morning much like any other, ordinary, unremarkable, except that it would become the day everything changed. The morning began, as it always did, for Michael Reynolds. An embrace from his mother, a breakfast of toast and jam, and the familiar clink of bicycle pedals tuning to the rhythm of the road. He kissed his sister goodbye, promised to be careful, and set out on the path to school that he had traveled countless times before. But on this day, June 15th, the ordinary routine dissolved into a nightmare. Witnesses would later recall fleeting, fragmented memories of Michael that morning. Mrs. Harper, the elderly woman walking her collie near the park, said she saw him pedaling past her house just after 7:30 a.m., his red bicycle catching the sunlight as he glanced over his shoulder as if sensing an unseen presence. Jason Miller, his closest friend, remembered waiting at the schoolyard for Michael, checking his watch repeatedly as the minutes slipped by. Michael was never late. The bell rang at 8:15, and still he did not arrive. Concerns began to ripple swiftly through the community. Michael's father tried calling the neighbors, while his mother frantically paced the kitchen, the gnawing unease settling in her chest like icy fingers. The police were alerted. Initial reports described a boy missing from a well-traveled route in broad daylight, a terrifying possibility in a town unprepared for such darkness. The last confirmed sighting of Michael remained elusive. Some claimed to have seen a strange man lingering near the river path, a figure unfamiliar to townsfolk, his presence marked by shadow and unease. Others whispered of a sudden harsh confrontation near the old mill, though no witnesses could verify such accounts. Despite numerous searches along the route, no trace of Michael was found. His backpack, wallet, and school supplies were untouched at home. His bedroom lay frozen in quiet anticipation, dust motes suspended in sunlight streaming through lace curtains. The community drifted into a collective state of disbelief and dread. Flyers with Michael's smiling face were plastered across windows and lampposts. "Have you seen this boy?" they implored. Neighbors formed search parties, combing through woods and fields, their voices trembling with desperation. Days began to blur into weeks, each moment steeped in a suffocating silence where answers should have been. Rumors spread like wildfire. Sightings in nearby towns, whispered stories of a runaway, or darker fables of abduction. The police maintained a careful balance of hope and caution, offering little but assurances that the investigation was ongoing. But hope faded slowly, replaced by a gnawing fear that the worst had become inevitable. With every passing hour, the specter of loss grew heavier, the question haunting every conversation: what had happened to Michael Reynolds? The search for Michael became millimeters from obsession, a scramble to piece together a puzzle that seemed designed to elude understanding. The Miller's Hollow Police Department, though ill-equipped for a potential kidnapping, committed every available resource to the cause. Officers retraced Michael's last known path, probing the undertow of the river, examining the banks where thorn bushes tangled and woodland gave way to murky waters. Divers scanned the depths day after day, hoping for a sign, a glint of his bicycle's red frame, a piece of clothing, anything that might illuminate his fate. The community rallied behind law enforcement efforts. Local businesses suspended operations, donating proceeds to fund search parties. Volunteers scoured every inch of nearby woods and abandoned buildings, their flashlights casting long fingers of light into the night. Media outlets descended on Miller's Hollow like vultures sensing a story. Headlines soared, "Boy missing without trace." National news crews captured images of tear-streaked faces and candlelit vigils filled with silent prayers. Yet the media's presence only deepened the town's grief, turning private mourning into public spectacle. Investigators interviewed dozens of potential witnesses, compiling conflicting accounts that only thickened the fog. A man seen near the mill was questioned, but released no evidence linking him to the disappearance. A woman reported hearing a child's cry near the river, but no corroborating proof was found. Early forensic analysis yielded few clues. No signs of forced entry in the Reynolds home. No footprints or tire tracks, oddly yet found on Linden Avenue. Someone had vanished into thin air, swallowed by shadows before their story even began. The pressure mounted on the police chief, Harold Graves, a man weathered by years of service, but unprepared for a case so deeply wrenching. Each lead ended in dead ends. Each search brought hope dashed on the rocks of silence. The town's faith wavered, and rumors began breeding suspicion that Michael's disappearance was no accident, but something far more sinister. Family and friends demanded answers, their grief bruising the tender hopes of the community. There were late-night debates at the church meetings in the town hall, and whispered accusations passed like poison in the streets. Some wondered if the disappearance was the fault of someone familiar, someone they had previously trusted, and yet amid despair, the search persisted. Flyers continued to circulate the image of Michael's boyish grin, a beacon for anyone with answers. The police maintained their presence patrolling the streets and questioning strangers refusing to let the case go cold. But as years passed, Michael became a ghost etched into the town's collective memory, a wound that refused to heal. As often happens in cases filled with uncertainty, darkness breeds suspicion, and suspicion breeds secrets. Over the decades, several suspects emerged from the shadows, each bringing a tangled web of motive, alibi, and unanswered questions. One figure who dominated early speculation was Henry Blake, a drifter known in Miller's Hollow for his odd behavior and frequent run-ins with the law. Blake's presence near the river on the morning of Michael's disappearance had been reported by several residents, though none could place him in direct interaction with the boy. Interviews revealed Blake's troubled past, a man haunted by addiction and desperate for redemption, his movements erratic and sometimes violent. Yet despite suspicions, no concrete evidence linked him to the vanishing. His alibi remained thin, but his guilt unconfirmed. Another involved was Martha Jenkins, a local woman whose son once had disputes with Michael in school. Some claimed heated arguments and a lingering grudge that added bitterness to a seemingly trivial conflict. Gossip painted Martha as hostile, but community members who knew her insisted she was a grieving mother herself, pained by the loss that had shaken her own family. An intriguing, if chilling, theory involved the possibility of abduction by an unknown predator, someone living quietly among the town's residents whose true nature was hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. Rumors swirled of secret meetings behind the old mill, whispered warnings and strange nighttime noises. Conspiracy theories flourished, some hinting at a cover-up by local authorities unwilling to expose uncomfortable truths. Others suggesting that Michael had been taken far from Miller's Hollow, lost to a world too vast and uncaring to care for a small-town boy. Theories extended toward darker possibilities involving secret cults or unspeakable crimes, alleging with no proof that Michael was sacrificed to some sinister cause. These whispers spread unease, even fear among the town's residents, creating an atmosphere thick with paranoia. Each suspect brought their own shadows and contradictions. Alibis conflicted. Testimonies changed under pressure. The community divided between belief and denial, hope and suspicion. But none of these threads produced closure. The mystery only deepened, twisting into a labyrinth where certainty was the rarest commodity. 3 decades passed, 30 years marked by pain, unanswered questions, and the relentless passing of time that can erode even the strongest memories. The case of Michael Reynolds faded from national headlines, but remained an unhealed wound in Miller's Hollow. Then, in the summer of 2022, a startling discovery brought the past rushing back. During a routine environmental survey, workers dredging Mill Creek near the old mill uncovered an object partially submerged beneath thick layers of silt and debris. It was Michael's bicycle, the unmistakable red Schwinn, downstream from where he was last seen. The bicycle's frame was rusted, the tires long since flattened and the paint dulled by decades underwater. Yet its very presence reignited a firestorm of speculation and grief. How had it ended up there? What story did it hold beneath its corroded surface? The discovery prompted a renewed investigation. Experts examined the bicycle for clues using cutting-edge forensic technology. Microscopic fibers, traces of unknown DNA, and faint imprints hinted at a struggle, though the evidence was fragile and fractured. Local historian Anna Pierce, who had chronicled Miller's Hollow's past for years, uncovered long-buried records suggesting the river had at one point been a favored dumping ground for the town's criminal elements. The possibility of foul play, once dismissed, now surged to the forefront. More hauntingly, interviews with elderly residents evoked a dark chapter of the town's history, a series of disappearances and unexplained tragedies that had been quietly buried beneath the narrative of a sleepy community. The public, reawakened by the discovery, demanded answers. New suspect leads emerged, cold cases reopened, and old grievances resurfaced. Police Chief Tom Hernandez, who had inherited the investigation, faced intense pressure to unravel a mystery layered with decades of neglect and silence. Yet just when it seemed the case might finally crack, a provocative twist shattered expectations. A thorough examination of the bike revealed tampering hidden beneath the rust was a serial number deliberately filed off and signs of recent repainting and modification. How could an object submerged for 30 years show evidence suggesting it had recently been disturbed? This revelation plunged the investigation into a fresh abyss. Was the bicycle planted to mislead? Were new players involved, or had someone been manipulating the case all along? The lines between past and present blurred, weaving a complex weave of deception. In the end, the bicycle's emergence did not solve the mystery. Instead, it added layers of intrigue, opening doors to questions no one was ready to face. 30 years after that calm June morning, forever changed Miller's Hollow. Michael Reynolds' disappearance remains a haunting enigma. His bicycle, found where the river runs cold and deep, floats like a ghost in the town's collective consciousness, a symbol of innocence lost and truths yet to be uncovered. As this story unfolds, one cannot help but wonder, in the shadows, where time erases footprints and memories unravel, how many other vanished tales lie waiting beneath the surface, yearning to be heard. The mystery of Michael Reynolds is one of those stories that settle uneasily beneath the skin. From a simple journey to school to a 3-decade-long disappearance, his absence carved a void that still echoes in every corner of Miller's Hollow. A boy stolen by unknown forces, a community fractured by loss, and a bicycle found decades later in a silent river. These threads together weave a tapestry soaked in suspense and sorrow. We traversed the childhood of a young boy blooming in the embrace of a small town, wandered with him down familiar roads, and then faced the sudden chilling rupture of his vanishing. We followed desperate searches, investigations steeped in frustration, and theories both plausible and dark. Suspects stirred the embers of suspicion, but never delivered truth. Then, with a haunting final twist, the rediscovery of a submerged relic upended everything we thought we knew. Yet even today, Michael's fate remains unresolved. This story compels us to confront not just the enigma of disappearance, but the deeper fears nestled within the human soul. The fear of the unknown, the terror of lives interrupted without warning. It reveals the fragility of safety, the stubborn persistence of grief, and the painful quest for justice that can span generations. Michael Reynolds' story is a mirror reflecting not just a small town's tragedy, but the universal human experience of loss and endurance. It reminds us that behind every vanished person is a constellation of love and sorrow, a family suspended in time, waiting for answers that may never come. In the quiet moments when the world seems still, we ask ourselves what becomes of those who vanish without a trace. Do they find peace somewhere beyond sight, Or do their stories continue to ripple invisibly through the lives they touched? And perhaps more hauntingly, how many others wait to be found, their stories swallowed by the silence that follows a boy's final ride? The river runs deep, and beneath its steady current, the vanished may yet whisper. Do you hear them?